Sunday, we went back to Doe Run, Texas, behind Pine Curtain. You know, it's a little town in the eastern part of the state, and I often reflect on Tom, who owns the best body shop and auto repair in 5 counties. Now, Tom will tell you, never mind, don't mess with Texas. He would say, you don't mess with Miss Modine. Now, she has gone to her reward, but her legacy still endures with her grandson and a granddaughter who have remained in town. They're in their vigorous 50s. They are forces of nature, and they use their power for good. Now, Miss Modine, and there's a story how she got that particular nickname. Martha Ophelia Dean was named for her grandmother and a great aunt. She has the family. There was a sister and then 2 brothers, and they followed kind of stair steps about every other year. And then there was a 3-year gap, and then there was Miss Modine. Another 3 years passed, and 2 more brothers and a sister, again in that every other year stair step. Now, it's often in the case of large families that 1 or 2 children in the middle, somewhere along the line, will take on the role of being another oldest child, kind of behaving in the typical, stereotypical eldest child way, and that was Miss Modine. She had 2 sets of brothers on both sides, so she had to learn to assert herself pretty well at the beginning, and she did. Her sister, older sister, got married, and she found herself becoming kind of her mother's right hand in the kitchen and in a lot of management of the farm. She had a good head on her shoulders. She was a quick learner, and her mother ran the business, and her father did more of the marketing, and found herself going with him to different places and listening to him talking with the other men at other farms. And so she was a quick learner. She listened well, and again, she was a good person to have there. For women at her time, it was a great opportunity to go to the business college. The different skills that she learned of typing and shorthand, and really excelled at bookkeeping. She loved math. Well, in due course, she married. Sad to say, her husband, he was a bit all icing and no cake. He is good looking, but not much in the good get up and go department. His father had gotten the first auto dealership, Ford auto dealership in that area. And he ran it, trying to train the son to take over. Now, Miss Modine, again, had learned well at the business college, and she began to help out with some of the bookkeeping and checking on the orders. That was the request, actually, of her husband and her father-in-law and her mother-in-law. She knew the business quite well, and in due course, her husband took over, and while people knew they needed to pay their respects to him, as Mr. Pender, they all knew that the voice that really mattered was the voice in the back of Miss Modine. She knew the business well. She even knew that Edsel would be a disaster, so they never ordered any to sell. She made sure that their order got misdirected. And because it was a family business, she could weave in and out of sorts. She could come in, check the books, make an order, and the next thing you know, she was at First Presbyterian leading a circle. And then she's president of the garden club, and then she is back home making sure the kids have done all their homework. She was a force of nature, and she had a sharp tongue. In fact, her father said her tongue was sharper than the needles that she used for sewing. However, she knew how to use it well. She knew there was one child, basically, you had to hit that child verbally, hit the child over the head with a 2x4 to get his attention. And then, oh, okay. Another child needed it sugar-coated. A simple, now, do you think this is the best thing to do right now? Would take care of everything for months. So it was a weapon, but she knew how to use it well. Now, Miss Modine is gone, like I said. However, she came to Tom's mind when he heard again the story of Abigail, preached at First Presbyterian in Doe Run. Today, I want to look at the story of Abigail and David, make a few observations, make the Doe Run connection, And then what does it mean for us today? The whole story can be found in 1 Samuel 25. It takes just a few minutes to read it, and really it's an interesting story. It is worth taking those 5 minutes to read it. To summarize where we are, David has been the shepherd boy. He has gone and served at the court of King Saul and played the instrument and appeased him. And David and Goliath, all that has taken place. And then David has fallen out of favor with King Saul, and he is with a group of merry men. Men that's described in the scripture who are in debt, in distress, and in discontent. It's a hard combination. These are people on the edge, and I won't say they were exactly outlaws. I'll just say they got really close to the border. And an occasional maybe toe across the line. Now, at this time, they are out there, and they encounter a man named Nabal, and his name literally means fool. Maybe it was a nickname he picked up in high school. I don't know, but that's how everybody refers to him. I mean, how would you like to have that as your nickname? Hey, fool, how you doing there? But anyway, that is his name. That's how he is known, and it is sheep shearing time. Basically, time to harvest the wool. David and his married men had kept an informal guard on those herds, I'm sure, as well as others. Again, there are people on the edge, but they're keeping a guard. Their hopes of getting a scraps. Look, I did this. Can I just have a few scraps from the table, so to speak? It's a way of finding work. Well, he goes to ask Nabal, you got anything to spare? We'd appreciate it. We've been here, not messing with anybody. Could you do that? And Nabal says, who are you? Never heard of you. Or something, okay, everybody's heard of David, who had served at the court of King Saul. So that's even an outright lie, or the guy's just out to lunch. He said, I've never heard of you. This country's full of runaways, lowlife, riffraff, trashy sorts. Be gone. Well, David has had it. He is tired, he is worn, he is exhausted. He's worked hard, and now he has been blown off. I've had it moments. I guess I suspect that you all have had them too. David said, that's it, I've just had it. Boys, get your weapons. We're going to work. Now the word gets to Abigail from Nabal's servants. So they say, look, he's been out there, he never hurt us. He could have, but he didn't. He never took advantage of us. He could have, but he didn't. He really has been a shelter. There really are some bad guys out there. And he's been like a shelter for us. This is not good. Well, Abigail gets supplies, and she goes to David, and she speaks well to him. She says, I know Nabal has lived up to his name. Bless his heart. So please accept my apology, and please accept these gifts, and please excuse his folly. You're going to be king one day. You fight the Lord's battles. You don't want an ugly incident like this on your conscience once you're a king. Abigail treats David like a king. In fact, one commentator said it's an interesting progression. Samuel anoints him. At different points, Jonathan and even Saul acknowledge that one day he will be king. And now we have an upstanding community member, a prominent citizen, noting the reality. Abigail shows tact and diplomacy, acknowledging the shortcomings of her husband. She reminds David that he fights the Lord's battles, not personal vendettas like Saul, kind of hinting at that. She calls him to his better self and says, what do you want on your conscience? He acts wisely, and that was our scriptural lesson for today. And then, after he accepts the supplies and she goes back, Nabal was feasting and drinking and in a very good mood. And so she waits until the morning when he is sober to tell him what happened. He is so shocked he has a stroke and eventually dies, and that's the end of Nabal. What can we take from this story? First, we have the question that I'll be asking in each message during this series on David is, what story do you want to tell? What story does David want to tell at this point? By your actions, words, responses, what story do you want to tell? They'll be, hey, David, you're king, your grandchildren are there. Or they're going to ask, hey, tell us about the time that you wiped out Nabal and all of his men. Or tell us about the time that you spared him. What story do you want to tell? We have here a reminder about acting out in anger and of the possible negative consequences if you do it, the negatives that can follow, the positives if you do not. A good reminder here of how we respond to it. Even when we're wrong, how we respond makes all the difference. We see here a need of the gift of discernment, of wisdom. In James's letter, he says, if you lack wisdom, pray for it in the first chapter, verse 1-5. Lack it, pray for it. In chapter 3, he says, the wisdom from above is pure, peaceable, gentle, reasonable, full of mercy and good fruits, unwavering and without hypocrisy. Pray for wisdom. Now, what the story, as Tom heard it told, he thought back to an early encounter with Miss Modine. In his early days, because she was somebody who just knew people in town. In fact, she knew Tom's father, Tom's father started the auto repair section of the shop, and even knew his grandfather. Now, then they had the dealership in town, and the dealerships had their own auto shops. She never really saw them as rivals, per se. She just basically each got her own niche to follow. She knew their bread and butter was the sales of the cars. And so had no negative thoughts towards the other auto repair fleet people. Well, Tom had taken over the auto shop, and he wanted to build it into a body repair as well. And so he gets it together. He sinks some money into the equipment, what he needs for it. It's a kind of situation where he's going to need to be making money on it pretty quick. He knows a good way to do that is to go to dealerships and say, hey, for your body work, could you bring it my way? Well, he goes to first the Chevrolet dealership. And the Penders had the Ford dealership. The Onslows had the Chevrolet dealership. And same situation where the brains just skipped the second generation. And it's the second generation with whom he's speaking over there at the Chevrolet dealership. And he is blown off. And the guy said, I mean, who do you think you are? Talking to the likes of me, trying to get some sort of arrangement. Who do you think you are? And in fact, go away. I'm telling other folks, don't mess with people like you.